Hey, welcome in. Back again, Monday Live. Do it every week right here, 7 p.m. I am Jason Priester, allclemsontigers.com. Not a lot of optimism heading into the weekend, man. Just didn't feel a lot of optimism. Had a lot of people predict the Clemson win over here in the Facebook group that we all converse in. Um, but outside of that, not a lot of confidence for Clemson heading into the weekend against this Notre Dame team. I mean, just brutal truth, just not a lot of confidence. Um, I think there were three people on the beat that actually picked Clemson to win, and I'm gonna pat myself on the back here a little bit because I was one of them. I don't know why, man. I just had a feeling. I was talking to a friend Friday night at the South Lawrence football game, and I just had a feeling. I just had a feeling that defense was going to atone for what happened up there in South Bend last year, and I thought the offense would do just enough. Turns out, they did more than enough, man. They ran it right down Notre Dame's throat. I don't think anyone was expecting that. Just Phil Muffa just absolutely took advantage of his opportunity and just killed it. Just killed it. Close to 40 carries, over 250 yards. Um, it's been a while since Clemson's run the ball like that. Not a ton, not a ton in the passing game, man. But if you look at some of Notre Dame's numbers coming in, not very surprising, especially down the field. Notre Dame opponents were just 5 of 40, 13%, for 163 yards with no touchdowns and 3 interceptions on passes of 20 or more yards in the air. 5 of 40. That secondary, I watched a lot of the Notre Dame DBs on the Clemson wide receivers Saturday, man, and they were good, man. They were blanketing those guys. They were good. So kudos to them. Just not a lot of. I have to ignore my dog. She's raising Cain over there. Just wasn't a lot in the downfield passing game, But Klubnik, I thought Klubnik played within the system. Thought he didn't panic. Did what he needed to do. There was the bad pitch on the delay there to Muff. I thought that was a little rushed, but other than that, I don't recall a whole bunch of bad decisions or anything, man. You know, just overall a pretty good game. Bro. Got my daughter coming in here to take care of this dog. And then can't say enough about Aiden Swanson. Man, he just killed it, kept pinning them deep every time. He can make the argument he could be the MVP of the game. Great to see Colin Griffin get in there and get an interception. Found out Thursday he was going to play due to Sherrod Coble's injury. All the starters they had out, 2 on that offensive line. Colin Sadler's not 100% healthy. It kind of looked rather bleak, but again, I don't know. I just had a feeling. I had a feeling that defense was going to come to play Saturday. And after they gave up the 2 long runs on that opening drive, man, they were just downright dominant. They controlled the line of scrimmage. They never let Sam Hartman get comfortable. I mean, it was just, it was a dominating effort. One of those defensive performances we have become accustomed to seeing from Clemson. It kind of took you back to the Venables days a little bit. I'm not saying they were exactly the same, but a little bit. One of the biggest things that stand out to me the other day was watching Wes Goodwin down on the field, chest bumping defensive lineman coming off that field. Man, people think he don't ever show any energy. He was showing some Saturday. Yeah, Mike. No, the pick was absolutely not on Cade, man. I saw somebody try to put it on him, more than one person actually. that's a slant route, man. That if I'm not mistaken, that was a slant route, man. To hit Bo Collins right in his hands, he's got to catch that ball. He's got to catch that ball. But the fact that it came down right into the defender's hands and there was a long return, that's kind of sums up Clemson's season in a nutshell. Was this addition by subtraction, not players, but coaches realizing the blocking scheme wasn't working? I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. Dabo got asked about that. Garrett Riley got asked about that today, and they Riley just made it kind of sound like it was decided based on the opponent, right? I don't know. I can't answer that, but I got a feeling you'll see more zone moving forward. I mean, it worked, man. I mean, that's kind of been Clemson's bread and butter, forever now. That was a staple of the old Clemson offense. I don't recall seeing. I might have missed it, and again, I haven't watched the replay, but I don't recall seeing one guy on the offensive line pulling Saturday. And if they did, it wasn't nearly like it was, weeks past. It'd be interesting to see how much they, what they do moving forward, though. I tell you who played exceptionally well in my eyes was Trent Howard. And talk about a guy that came in and killed it. You're asking if will this O-line start this week? Maffa must start. I thought Trent Howard was fantastic, man. The guy that's just kind of just been waiting on his opportunity, and he gets it and he takes full advantage of it. We'll see if he starts again this week. I would assume that he would, because Tate's not coming back anytime soon, so I don't see why he wouldn't. Should have changed the blocking scheme after the bye week. That's easy to say in hindsight. It's always easy to say in hindsight. I didn't see a lot of people suggesting it before the bye week. No, it kind of is what it is. That was the Wake Forest game. Maybe looking back on it, maybe it's something you should. I said it Saturday. Why did it take 4 games to, make that switch? Because that Wake Forest was when the offensive line really started, kind of stinking it up the week right before the bye, and they've not played well since. Kind of gotten worse along the way. So I said the same thing Saturday. Why did it take 4 games to kind of realize it and go back to it? But again, it's also easy to say that after the fact. I do think it's a good question. I don't have an answer to it. Do they roll with this O-line the rest of the year? Yeah, I think that's your offensive line the rest of the year, because again, Tate's not coming back anytime soon. Dabo said after the game they might could get him back for a postseason game, but I that would surprise me. Parks isn't coming back, so yeah, I would be shocked if it was not the same 5. Another thing Dabo said after the game Saturday night, that they were all those guys were being evaluated from the very beginning, and if it wasn't working, everybody was getting a shot until they found something that worked. So I mean, they were going to go deep into that bench if they had to, man. But fortunately, it worked out. Those 5 worked out. We even got a little glimpse at Ryan Linthicum after Putnam's shoe blew up coming off the field. Had to get him a new shoe. Refreshing to see Clemson dominate both sides of the line of scrimmage for the first time the whole game. Yeah, it's been a minute. It has been a minute. That offensive line has not played well the last month. Again, I've said it several times. I thought the offensive line played better the first 4 games of the season than a lot of people did. I thought they were fine against Duke, and then you had the 2 cupcakes. I thought they played very well against Florida State. That's when the wheels started to come off. Um, Wake did a little something different and used those twists and stunts or whatever you want to call it, and it can it confused them. And there's several teams did it to them after the fact, and they never were able to pick it up. And they just they did not look good for 4 consecutive games. And Kate Clemens said today he was glad to see them play pissed off, and he hopes they play that way the rest of the year. Those backs have not had running lanes to run through like that all season. Even back when the line was playing well, they weren't playing as well as they did Saturday. They opened holes, man. And Maffa looked as good as he's looked since the Florida State game. He had his burst, man. His vision was there. He was decisive and patient at the same time. He looked like the guy that we saw against Florida State. And I've kind of picked on him and Shipley a little bit over the last few, saying they just didn't look like they had that burst. But bottom line is, most of the time, a running back's only as good as the blocking in front of him. Sometimes you got to be able to make something out of nothing, and neither one of those guys have been good at doing that of late. But they've had a whole lot of nothing to work with. Gotten very little help from their offensive line, and he got some Saturday, man. He took advantage of it, and if it's me, that's who I'm rolling with. He's my back now. Shipley's, I know there have been Shipley's kind of been 1A and Moffa's 1B. In my eyes, those roles will be reversed right now. We'll see if it plays out that way, but that's how it would be. Just don't overlook Georgia Tech. Look, man, I don't think this Clemson team has the luxury of overlooking anybody. They didn't play that well. They still turned it over a couple times on offense. Could have been a few more times. They pounced on a couple of their own fumbles. So still some sloppiness. Still some sloppiness out there. I don't think they have the luxury of overlooking anybody. I was actually very surprised. This dog's gonna be the death of me. I was very surprised to see Clemson a 2-touchdown favorite. I was expecting it to be 10 or not 15. But yeah, you can't that Georgia Tech team's playing pretty good football, man, and that quarterback's dangerous. They seem to go to the 2-back set more in the red zone late in the first half, but again, they went away from it just as quickly as it showed up. What gives? Yeah, I don't know how anybody can have any complaints about the running game Saturday. 1 back, 2 backs. I don't. What they did was effective. What they did worked. It was extremely productive. I don't know how you argue with the results. When you go with the 2-back set, you're taking a receiver off the field, and that's It's just not going to be something Clemson leans heavily on ever. It's not going to be a staple of the offense. I mean, it's a package, but it's not going to be a staple. They're not going to. You're not going to see a ton of two back sets. They don't want to take that other receiver off the field or pass catcher off the field. The offensive line was not the problem. Man, the offensive line's been one of the biggest problems on the team for the past month. Period. I don't know how you can come to any other conclusion. I mean, I know you want to tell me it's the quarterback, but the quarterback don't block for the running backs. The quarterback don't protect himself. The Klubnik's not the one that's being, it's not his fault. He's being pressured on like 35% of his pass attempts coming into Saturday. But you can keep telling me that Klubnik's the problem and not the offensive line. But the offensive line was absolutely a problem the past few weeks. It was absolutely problematic. You're the only person I know that doesn't think that. Now, we saw Saturday how good they can be when put in the right positions. But what they were doing up front and that offensive line has absolutely been a big time problem. The biggest problem on that offense for the past month. XT consistently makes an impact, even though it doesn't always show up in the stat sheet, always being held to. He gets held a lot, but that comes with playing defensive line, man. It is what it is. I thought XT played well Saturday. I thought he played very well. Earlier in the season, I thought he was getting covered up in the run game some, and he's been much more effective there past few weeks. Clemson with an early 13-6 lead over Winthrop here. I was wondering if you still see several changes being made this offseason, and that is if we run the table. I still believe Dabo will have heard a lot of saying he wouldn't. Yeah, I think there's going to be some changes on the coaching staff, regardless. No matter what happens the rest of the way, it's just the nature of the beast. I've heard that Dabo Sweeney told all those guys early in the week. I think it was Monday that and this was before the phone call Monday night that everybody thinks got Dabo all riled up, because it sounds like he was already fired up. That he was kind of in scorched earth mode Monday afternoon and put everybody in that building on notice. Told him he'd get rid of them all, players and coaches. How many recruits were there? There were a lot of recruits. There's always a lot of recruits at every home game. Jordan Allen was there, 2025 wide receiver with an offer. He's a big time target. Another big time target was 2025 defensive lineman Isaiah Campbell. I'm supposed to talk to him when we're done with this show tonight and get his feedback. Talked to a couple of younger guys last night who were there. And their name is escaping me right this second. Hold on, and I will tell you. 2025 offensive line Kale Ellis, who really talked up the visit, and I talked to a 2027 guy, Christian Hunter. I don't usually talk to freshmen, but because they're just getting started and they got so long to go. But he talked it up too. It sounds like they did based on some early returns, it sounded like they made some headway with some guys Saturday. I have heard Dabo made it more clear for that call last week. He's going to dig his heels in deeper about the coaches and the portal. Yeah, I don't know where that comes from. There ain't nobody want to win in that building more than Dabo. That much I know. That guy wants to win more than anybody. He's competitive as anybody. If there's spots that he thinks he needs to address on that staff, he's going to do it. Um, that's there's just no bones about that. Right now, there's a lot of inexperience on the offensive side of the ball on that coaching staff. Even some of the guys that have 4 or 5 years experience, most of it's all at Clemson. They don't have any outside experience, um, which that's not everybody's got to start somewhere, right? But maybe there's a little bit too much. Maybe there was a little bit too much inexperience hired all in a short time frame with all the departures they had. But yeah, I didn't take that at all. I didn't take that meaning at all. And his stance on the portal has been pretty clear from the get go, and I don't see it changing. Um, people, there's a narrative out there that Dabo Swinney refuses to use the portal, and that's just it's utter BS. Maybe he refuses to use it in a way some of these fans want to see him use it, the way Florida State uses it. Some of these other teams who are bringing in a dozen guys via the portal every year, and I think Florida State's going to get away from that. The further you get into Norvell's tenure, and the better they start, the more recruiting classes they put together or string together back to back. Because Norvell's another guy who would much rather go to high school route than bring in all these portal players. But for Dabo, man, they went and tried to address the offensive line after the 2021 season, just didn't land the guy. They had every intention on trying to address a couple of spots after last season. Turns out they just ended up with no room. And I think you're going to see them try to address at least one spot on that roster in the portal this offseason. I think you'll see Dabo use it to try to fill gaps, but he's never gonna use it to retool his roster. That's what he recruits guys out of high school for. But I didn't get the vibe from that call last Monday night that he was digging in his heels and was or anything like that. I think that guy attacked him personally. I think that guy mocked his faith, and it kind of set him off. And I think a lot of us would have got set off if we felt attacked. Seen something about Blake Franks maybe decommitting from South Carolina. I have no idea. I don't even track Blake Franks anymore. If he does, I don't know. We'll have to see. Like I said, I don't even track him anymore. He was let's just say, from my understanding, and things could have changed because I haven't talked to anybody about him in a while. From my understanding, let's just say he had his shot and didn't take it, and Clemson moved on. No, the offensive line does not fumble or throw interceptions. You got that right. I didn't say it was the only problem. I said it was the biggest problem. Still dropping a lot of passes. Collins. Bo is what he is right now. He's solid. He's not elite. He's solid. He could stand to be a little bit more consistent. Man, he had that one spectacular catch. He doesn't generally. He's not had a lot of success with the contested catches down the field. We saw it in Raleigh, weekend before last, where he had the big holding penalty on the big play on the opening drive, then the big drop that turned into the interception in this game. He's got to catch that ball, man. Period. He's got to catch that ball. Watch games. Cade threw interceptions usually with pressure. The guy going into Saturday, Klubnik was pressured on over 35% of his pass attempts. But nah, the offensive line ain't a problem. When he's under that much pressure and gets zero help from his running game, it's going to lead to with no. He's young and inexperienced. He's played 10 games now or whatever it is. He's still got a lot of room to grow, man. But he was getting no help from the running game, getting pressured on 35% of his pass attempts. I think it's silly to say the offensive line is not a problem. I could not disagree more. When your offensive line plays that poorly in front of a young and inexperienced quarterback, it's going to lead to mistakes. It's going to put a lot of pressure on him that he otherwise wouldn't have. How much further along would that kid be if he had a competent running game or a serviceable running game the past 4 months? He's not had, or the past 4 weeks, he's not had one. And Clemson has struggled to run the ball and struggled mightily to run the ball into red zone most of the season. It is what it is. I mean, that can lead to a guy trying to do too much. And to me, Klubnik is a guy that has at times looked like a quarterback trying to do too much. Yeah, Cade was not great Saturday. He was not great. I'm not saying he was. You're making the argument that Cade is the biggest problem on the offense. I am making the argument that he's not. I am trying to say that if his offensive line had been average, maybe he'd be a little bit further along than what he is right now. If his running game had been even serviceable the past month, or if they give him even a little bit of help in the red zone, he might be further along than he is right now. I don't know the answer to that question. You don't either. We can sit here and debate that all day long. But I get it. You think the offense's problems, you think Cade Klubnik shoulders all the responsibility for the struggles of the offense. Again, I wholeheartedly disagree. Does he share in some of that responsibility? Absolutely. Is he the biggest problem in my eyes? Absolutely not. Dabo heaped a ton of praise on Thomas Austin after the game. A ton. Maybe Riley's two-man counter pull scheme was the issue. Look, I said last week that the problem might not be just as simple as who's coaching them, right? Um, it might be a little bit deeper than that. I pointed at strength and conditioning because they seem to get pushed around. Um, I said maybe these offensive linemen don't fit what Riley wants to do on offense. Maybe it's a bunch of different things combined. But again, I also said it might be not as cut and dry as just who's coaching them. Um, that zone blocking stuff, man, Clemson's been doing. That's what they've been in that inside zone. The old Clemson scheme leaned heavily on that inside zone. It was the staple of that offense, or the staple of the running game, anyways, on that old offense. I mean, they've kind of gotten away from it this year. I thought they'd still lean heavily on that this year, and they've not leaned nearly as heavily on as I thought they would. There's been a lot more counters and traps and those kind of things than I thought we'd see. But yeah, he did. He heaped a ton of praise on Thomas Austin. That's the scheme that Thomas Austin played in. It's the scheme that he's coached, that he was taught in under, with Robbie Caldwell. So Does Clemson have a quarterback coming in 2024? No. Nope. They went after several and missed on 4 of them, and then decided they were just going to move on to 2025 and lock their guy up early. They have 4-star Blake Hebert. He part of the reason why he went ahead and committed so early was due to the fact that they had told him that they were done trying to recruit for 2024. They weren't going to take one any longer. So that's why he decided to jump on board. Fortunately, if you get to the end of the season and you think you got a quarterback problem, there's a thing over there called the transfer portal. You can always go find you a 1-year rental if you don't think Chris Vazina is going to be ready, because, I mean, you still got another 5-star sitting on the bench, even though I'm not sure he's anywhere close to being ready to play. How many offensive linemen will Clemson take in 2025? I think 3. 3. I think it's going to be 3. Let's get to the end of the year and see if there's any unexpected attrition, which I wouldn't be shocked if there was, but I think the number is going to start at 3. As a fan, I go back to the early 70s. The 80s were a great time for atmosphere. How was the crowd? Saturday, it seemed loud on the TV. It was pretty electric in there for a noon game. I've not seen many noon games with that kind of atmosphere. Very few. The Syracuse game a few years ago when Trevor Lawrence got knocked out and Chase Bryce come in, that was a raucous crowd that day. One of the loudest noon games I've ever heard. The Florida State game earlier this year was a loud one. There's been others in the past, but this one ranks right up there, man. It was loud. Look at the Dabo demeanor at the Notre Dame presser compared to the North Carolina State presser. Dabo does not like losing, man. He even talked about, that after, I think it was the North Carolina, I think it was the North Carolina State game where Klubnik said, that him and Dabo Swinney talked about that right there on the sideline right after that game ended. That was a feeling they do not want to get used to, but having been around Dabo a little bit the last few years, yeah, that is something I can vouch for. He does not like to lose. Again, you'll be hard pressed to find somebody more competitive than that guy. Yes, sir. South Florence played. They played Lugoff Elgin, shut them out. There ain't nobody scored on South Florence's defense. Man, it's been so long, I can't remember the last time. It's been a while, a few weeks. They shut Lugoff Elgin out. They shut West Florence out. They allowed only a safety against North Myrtle Beach. So going back at least 3 games, they have not that defense has not allowed a point. South Florida's got some things to clean up, though. They've been committing too many penalties the last few weeks. Probably 8, 9, 10 a game. They get Richland Northeast this week, I think it is. Clemson up on Winthrop, 22-15, 5:21 left in the first half. If you fire Grisham, what happens to the 2024 wide receiver commits? I know Dabo went to Tampa Catholic himself, so maybe it doesn't matter if Tyler Grisham is let go. Tyler Grisham's caught a lot of flack for not being able to land big-time recruits over the past couple classes. Like high, 5-star guys, big-time high 4-star guys. And probably a little bit more so than he deserved. He absolutely deserves some of that flack, but not all of it, man. NIL plays a part in that. It plays a part in the fact that Clemson's not recruiting wide receivers at the same level anymore. So does their passing attack having been less than stellar the past couple of years, since Trevor Lawrence left. All those things play into that. But I think it's only fair, when you land two guys like Wesco and TJ Moore, if you're going to shoulder him with the blame on missing on a bunch of guys, you got to at least give him some of the credit for landing guys. So to think he gets no credit for helping recruit those guys, I think is absurd. But here comes the but. Big but. I don't think either of those guys come to Clemson without Garrett Riley. So let's say that if there is a change made at that position in the offseason, I feel pretty confident those guys will still be locked in, because I think they came to play in Garrett Riley's offense more so than they decided to come play and learn from Tyler Grisham. I'm not saying I didn't play any part in it. I'm just saying I think they wanted to come play in this Garrett Riley offense. Clemson is a developmental program. They will never be anything other than that. Dabo will always recruit. Hey, Dabo's never made any bones about that. It's a part of the fan base that's never really accepted it. He has said it time and time again. He runs a developmental program. It's like the best is the standard slogan that's plastered all over that building. People think that's supposed to mean, to be the best team in college football every year. And when it's not what it means at all. But, again, Dabo's never made no secret about the fact that he's going to run a developmental program. And I think that goes beyond the players he recruits. I think that goes to his coaching staff and everybody, in that building over there. It is what it is. You either accept that or you don't, but that's what he's going to do. He's never going to be a guy that, he said himself, if he was in Jeff Scott's shoes and taking over a South Florida team a couple of years ago that was really devoid of talent, he would have hit the portal hard and built that roster through the portal. But, I don't think Clemson's in a spot where they need to do that, man. If you look at just the, sheer talent from a recruiting ranking standpoint, only 4 teams in the country have more talent than Clemson does. I don't think that they have this big talent problem. Maybe talent level is definitely falling off at receiver. Make no mistake, man. I think they missed on some guys too. But overall, generally speaking, I don't think talent is nearly as big a problem as some others do, as some others think it is. He's out. There's going to be, with the way guys move around now and leave at the drop of the hat, there's always going to be a gap here or a gap there on your roster. And I think that's when you'll see Dabo try to use the portal. Do you think Dabo will try to get a big-time wide receiver out of the portal? I think Clemson was going to try to make a move and grab a receiver out of the portal last year. It depends on your definition of big time. Were they going to go after Keon Coleman? No. They weren't going to go after the guy who was commanding one of the biggest paydays. But, yeah, I think you'll see Clemson use the portal for – it just depends on where the gap's at and what year it is. If there's a gap at receiver, yeah, maybe, yeah. I think you'll see him use the portal and try to get a receiver. Just depends, on who's on the roster and numbers and who's in the portal. You got to see who's in it and know that there's somebody that you've got a shot at landing, because they're going to recruit the portal the same way he does the high school kids. He's not going to get into bidding wars. There's They're still going to want the high character guys and that fit from a cultural standpoint. And all those boxes have to be checked. Do you think it's accurate to say Riley or Dabo simplified the blocking schemes to help this line deal with Notre Dame? Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I I think that's, I think Garrett Riley kind of said that today too. He made it sound like that it was, you know, based on who they were playing and would be going forward. I don't know, who made the decision. I don't know if that's the real reason or if that's coach speak, but yeah, I do think they simplified it. I didn't see one time offensive lineman pulling the other day. It was just straight up, hat on a hat. What they've been doing at Clemson for years. Went back to what they know. Not billing on Cade like some Clemson fans. Kid is way too talented. Yeah, Cade's got Clemson's got he's got plenty of talent. He's got all the tools. He's got the intangibles. At the same time, he's not nearly as far along as I thought he would be at this point. He's still got a lot of growing to do. I think he can get there. I do think it's way too early to give up on him. But he is not what I thought he was going to be this year. I thought he was going to be a lot further along. We're seeing now why they why they didn't never gave him a real shot at starting last year. Because if he where he is right now, imagine where he was a year ago. It is what it is. Some guys develop faster than others, man. That's just that's part of football. But yeah, I agree 100%. It's way too early to give. You don't give up on a sophomore quarterback after. Yeah, he hasn't even started a full season yet. It's way too early. These players are 4 and 5 stars. O linemen are this bad. Blame falls on position coaches, not proper development. I don't know if it's that cut and dry. Maybe it is. That maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe the guys Clemson were recruiting don't really fit what Garrett Riley wants to do. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I know the guy that's coaching Clemson's offensive lineman right now. The 2 years he spent at Georgia State, his offensive lines are pretty dang good. They ran the ball pretty effectively behind that line his 2 years there. So I don't know if it's that cut and dry. The only way to know the answer to that is being in that building every day. If he's not around, come the end of the season, then you'll have your answer. But I'm just not convinced it is that cut and dry. Could be. I'm just not convinced it is. With Bo and Randall struggling a bit, we might want to try and go get a deep threat wide receiver out of Porter just in case Wesco ain't a day one guy. Well, you got to first and foremost, you got to have the numbers to do it. You got to have the spot open to do it. And there's a reason Clemson only took 2 wide receivers in this class because the numbers are tight. They're gonna be tight. They're not gonna have a crap ton of scholarships to go use in the portal come the end of the season unless they have guys leaving in mass. Once this thing's over. So you just have to wait and see what the numbers are at the end of the season. Dabo is very strict about his numbers, man. He's got a set number of scholarships that are devoted to each position, and he very rarely goes over that. They were gonna. There was one guy in this recruiting class they thought was worthy of oversign at wide receiver, and that was Mike Matthews. Maybe they see a guy in the portal they think is worthy of oversign. You have to wait and see who's in it, what your numbers look like. If there's somebody in it that you think you can land, there's a lot of factors that go into that. We really needed DJ Lagway or Aaron Nolan in 2024. I don't know. We'll see. It might end up being the case if Klubnik, doesn't continue to grow or start growing at a more rapid pace. And if Azina's not ready, but again, you got this thing over here called the portal you could go to and get a 1-year rental if it absolutely comes down to that. But the reason they didn't land those guys is because they already had 2 5-stars on the roster already. They just, who wants to come sit behind 2 5-stars or compete with 2 5-stars when there's an easier path in other places? And Lagway, Lagway was always probably going to go to the highest bidder. What's the chances Clemson wins out? I do think we handle Georgia Tech this week. Depends on which Clemson team shows up, brother. They keep continuing to turn the ball over, they're going to lose again. I could see them losing any of the games left on their schedule. I feel a lot better about the South Carolina game if it was in Clemson this year, but it's in Columbia, and Clemson's not been very good on the road. That is when they have been at their sloppiest. So I think they're all winnable, and I think they're all losable. Just depends on which Clemson team shows up. If they don't take care of the football, they could lose every game remaining on the schedule. If they are efficient and continue to win the turnover margin as they did Saturday, they can win every game left on the schedule. Just depends on which one shows up. It's kind of one of those Jekyll and Hyde type deals. Zach did indeed not wear his purple polo shirt to the game Saturday, and Clemson won, and that is kind of how it's played out. West Side will score against South Lawrence if they can get there. I think the only way West Side, they're on the opposite sides of the bracket, right? They'd have to play in the state title game, if I'm not mistaken. I have to go back and look at the brackets again. Telling you, hey, if you score on that defense, man, you're doing something right. They are really good on that side of the ball. That defensive line, they use a 3-man front. They got that Amari Adams kid on the outside, top player in the state. Man, he is a man among boys out there, and they got this shorter, big, stocky guy, nose guard. His name's Mason Mudge, and he kind of reminds you of Grady Jarrett. Man, he's kind of a smaller, stocky guy. He just throws guys around, throws guys around, and then Terrence Moore on the other side. And then them linebackers, man, they can fly. They can fly. CJ Britt. They've not Clemson's not really started recruiting 2026 quarterbacks hard yet. So we'll see how much interest they have in him. He's good, man. He's really good. I watched him work out at camp over the summer in Clemson. He was really good, but he worked out with the younger kids, not the upper echelon guys, because he was just going into his sophomore season. I think he's the first sophomore to ever start at his high school, maybe the first freshman to ever start. Works with the same QB coach as Deshaun Watson, and works with a QB coach that also worked with Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, if I'm not mistaken. He's put up some of the best numbers in Georgia this year, though. And again, he's only a sophomore. He's been killing it. Wouldn't shock me. Let's just say it wouldn't shock me to see him pop up at one of these last couple of home games. I'm against the portal. I don't think Clemson needs it except if they have critical need. Yeah, now we agree on something. Um, yeah, I don't think Clemson needs to go and overhaul that roster by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think they got big time talent problems. Again, I think the talent level of wide receivers dipped. I think we can all agree on that, but they got help coming. They got help coming. And I think those guys are going to be able to help immediately. So I'm with you there. I think you only need to use the portal if you got a gap here to fill, and you know you lose somebody or you have somebody graduate and move on to the NFL, and the guy behind him's just not quite ready. You go grab somebody to fill that gap until he gets ready. The junior and seniors transfers line against your freshmen and sophomores is a disadvantage. Well, that's where you got to try to make sure you're not filled with litter with freshmen and sophomores every year, right? So if it's that way every year, yeah, it's going to be a disadvantage. But again, I think Dabo Sweeney's okay if they're not competing for a national championship every year. He wants to. He's not going to go out and destroy his culture and make himself out to be a liar on the recruiting trail just to go overhaul his roster with transfers. And he's never going to be a win at all cost guy. It's never going to happen, and the administration's okay with that. They are perfectly fine with the way he runs the program. The results have, they kind of speak for themselves. Yeah, he's having to adjust and adapt in an all brand new world of college football right now, but I think he's going to be just fine. Um, how much does it cost for a big time wide receiver? Addison said he got $3.5 million. Well, you just answered your own question there, buddy. That's about the neighborhood. It's more about not getting into bidding wars. You know, just Clemson's not going to do it. There's a lot of schools that aren't going out and actively getting into bidding wars. Clemson's not the only one because those are the guys that you don't know. You know, you don't know if you can always trust what they're saying. You know, that they tell you they're coming, or do they mean it, or are they just going to take your offer somewhere else and try to get somebody to beat it, and then you miss out on somebody else because this guy told you he was coming. Um, that's just one reason. But they're never going to get in the bidding wars. It's going to be a more here. It's going to be more of a type of deal where here, this is what we can offer. Take it or leave it. If you don't want it, we're going to move on to the next guy. I think wideout is going to be a strength next year. Healthy Randall, Stellato, Williams, new blood coming in. If Bryant Wesco and TJ Moore are what I think they are, yeah, I think wide receiver is going to be a strength. I'm still extremely high on Noble Johnson. I think he's going to be a really solid player. He's not going to be a number one wide receiver. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's going to be the next Mike Williams or Sammy Watkins or anything like that. I think he can be a very good number two complementary type piece. I think he's got a lot of potential. We'll see what Ronan Hannafin brings. We already see what Tyler Brown brings when he's healthy. He's pretty good when he's not healthy, when he's not 100% healthy. But these two guys you got coming next year, they are difference makers, man. They are on a whole different level. And if you could find somehow, some way to get Adam Randall back to the level he was prior to that ACL injury, yeah, then I think wideout can be a strength next year. Yeah, I realized Thomas Austin was coaching at Georgia State, but you still got to coach your offensive lineman against the competition you're lining up against is the same competition as you are. Kind of the same at Clemson. It's the talent level. There's more talent the higher level you go up, but man, I don't think that makes as big a difference as some people think it is. You still got to go out and execute and do what you need to do. I'm just not sold on the fact that Thomas Austin is some horrible coach. Clemson's offensive line wasn't horrible last year under him. I'm just not sold on that yet. I might be proven dead wrong. I'm not sold on it yet. Evaluation of Coach Hall, still not sold on him. Yeah, I did a deep dive on this one last week or the week before. Defensive end is a position where kids used to line up to come play at Clemson. It's not that way anymore. You look at some of these guys they've brought in, in recent years. Took KJ Henry a long time to develop. Took Justin Masco a long time to develop. Two big time, highly touted guys. One was a 5-star. Zaire Patterson, big time, highly touted guy. Doesn't see the field. Cade Denoff, big time, highly touted guy. Career backup so far. Yeah, I think that's an area that might need to be looked at. Again, I'm not in that building every day. I can't evaluate coaching. I don't think it's fair to try to evaluate coaching just based on what you see on Saturdays. I think if you're not in there every day seeing what goes on inside that building, it's hard to know for sure one way or the other. But yeah, I think it's an area that could get looked at. Got to beat South Point and Northwestern. Yeah, I know who's on South Point's side of the bracket. Irmo too. Irmo kind of flexed and threw up 80-something points the other night. I hate the fact that they are letting these 2-win teams into the playoff. It's kind of a waste of a round, and it's about nothing but the gate. That team I watched the other night, Lugoff, had no business being in the playoffs, man. They were 2-8. They won one region game all year long. Like I told you, though, South's already beat South Point, so that's doable. And they did it up there at South Point. Just how bad would it be for recruiting if Georgia was to win the 3-state? I'm assuming you're talking about Georgia winning the first game of next year. I don't know. It depends on how Clemson loses. If they get their doors blowed off, maybe it hurts you a little bit. But I'm of the opinion one game doesn't impact recruiting that much one way or the other. I think it was good for Clemson to win in front of a couple of the guys that were there this past weekend. But if they had lost, do I think it would have knocked them out of the running or anything like that? No, it's always better when you win. Absolutely. But I don't think one game, sways things all that much in one direction or the other in the grand scheme of things. There will always be exceptions to that rule. It's just going to depend on the guy we're talking about and who's after him. But I don't think it helps that. I mean, it hurts you that much unless you lose like 42-0, and a bunch of the guys we're talking about are Clemson Georgia battles. Maybe then it hurts you some, but generally speaking, I don't think it hurts a ton. I mean, how much did Keon Coleman get? How about some of these other ones? No one reports it. There's a reason no one reports it, because they don't want that number out there. You don't ever hear Clemson guys talking about what they get NIL. I had somebody messaging me the other day telling me, that he's seen where Klubnik and Vizina were getting about the same NIL, and I asked him how he knew that, because nobody knows what Clemson's guys are making in total when it comes to NIL. It's just not something that gets talked about. And going back to Keon Coleman here, there's a reason they don't want that stuff out there. They don't want what they don't. The schools don't want that number out there. Number one, they don't want it. They don't want, if school A offers the player this much money, they don't want school B to know how much it is so they can come back and match it. They don't want that stuff out there publicly. Might be better if it was out there publicly, but right now they don't want it out there. I don't think player or schools want it out there publicly. So I can't answer that about how much Keon Coleman got. I have no idea. I heard Clemson got someone out of Jefferson High School. Yeah, a linebacker. You might have heard of him. His name's Sammy Brown. He's one of the. Yeah, I think most people might have heard about him, man. One of the top players in the class. Hey, man, don't worry about the typos, man. We'll muddle through. Yes, it is very dark in Florence, man. Very dark in Florence. I'm having a hard time getting used to this time change myself. All right. That shall bring us to the end of our journey. As always, man, I appreciate everybody that tunes in, man. I love cutting it up with you guys on Monday nights, man. Don't forget, check out the site, allclemsontigers.com. Check out the new thing we got going on over there, that Death Valley domain. It's the subscription part of the site. It's only $4.99 a month. Get a little bit cheaper if you want it for the whole year. Me and Zach will be right back here Wednesday night for Paul Talk. And of course, every Monday, I will be right here. Whether Clemson's, once we get into basketball season, there might be an exception here or there. But if it's a Monday, you can pretty much bank on me being here each and every Monday night, 7 p.m. to chop stuff up, man. And we will continue right on throughout the off season. These days football kind of never stops. January is a big recruiting month. 2 big recruiting weekends in January. We'll have basketball in February. March, you got spring practice, a lot of recruiting visits. April, you kind of wrapping up spring practice, and you got baseball that runs through, May into early June. June's a huge recruiting month. July's a first part of July, that's still a huge recruiting month. Get towards the end of July, and football's cranking right back up. ACC kickoff and then fall camp. So football's kind of never ending these days, man. So we will continue every Monday, even after the season. So don't fret. We can meet up right here and shoot the bull once a week. All right, I'm gonna take one more before we jump off here. Everyone on Twitter keeps screaming to use the portal, but not the ones putting up big cash to Tiger Impact. NCAA has a proposal to start making NIL numbers public. NCAA absolutely should. You're right. Most of the people that are screaming the loudest don't even donate to IPTAY, much less donate to Tiger Impact or dear old Clemson, to two collectives. At the same time, Clemson's collectives are very well funded at the moment. Very well funded. Most schools in this country would kill to have what Clemson's got, in that fund. I'm not saying they've got what Texas A&M's got or some of those kind of schools, but a majority of the schools around the country would love to have what Clemson's got in that NIL fund right now. At the same time, you're talking about a smaller school with a smaller alumni base. You got to be smart about how you spend it. You just can't afford to be getting into bidding wars for this guy and that guy and that guy and this guy. It'll start to run out fast. Although I don't think that's the biggest reason why they don't get into the bidding wars. I think it's more about that culture that Dabo's created there and him wanting to try to keep it intact as best he can. Although I do think the two can coexist if you go about doing it the right way. And I think that's how we'll see him use the portal. I think if Clemson was flush with cash and never had to worry about another dollar or where another dollar in NIL money came from, I think you see him still say to take the same approach. But as far as making those numbers public, I'm kind of torn on that. Maybe it would be good if those things were made public, but at the same time, it's not a salary, so to speak. If we were talking about salaries, I'd be all on board with it. It's kind of a privacy thing in a way. People usually don't like to be asked, "Hey, how much do you make?" So I can kind of see both sides of it. I do think it would be at least a little. There would be some positives if that stuff had to be public, but I think the NIL bubble is going to burst pretty soon, and I think we're headed for a break, and you're going to see this shift away from the NCAA and away from this amateur model, and players are going to start being paid salaries, and we're going to have player unions and those type of things, and it'll all be public then. My man says we'll end it on this one, man. He says the loudest boos come from the cheapest seats. I like it. Don't forget, me and Zach will be right back here on Wednesday, 7 p.m. Paul Talk. Sorry we had some technical difficulties last week, so I had to skip last week. We'll be right back here this Wednesday. Pre-game show Friday, and obviously right back here Monday, 7 p.m. Appreciate everybody tuning in, man. Y'all make this thing fun. Y'all have really helped grow this show over the past few weeks. This football season, man, we started out doing this thing on Facebook Live about a year ago. I just go live on Facebook on some random night, wouldn't even advertise it or anything, and just talk a little football and what the issues were and what went wrong, what went right, and it's kind of grown into this. And I want to thank all you. None of it's possible without you guys. And hopefully you continue this journey with me, man. See y'all next Monday, 7 p.m.